Most people believe that becoming more self-aware should make life easier. But what if the opposite is often true? What if the very ability to understand yourself is also what quietly steals your peace? Because some of the happiest moments in life happen when you're fully present. Yet self-awareness constantly pulls your attention inward. Instead of simply living the moment, your mind begins watching itself live the moment. You notice every hesitation, every awkward pause, every tiny shift in someone's expression. And once you start seeing those details, it's almost impossible to stop. Psychologists sometimes describe this as heightened self-focused attention. Your mind becomes both the observer and the observed. At first, it feels like wisdom. Later, it can quietly become exhaustion. But that's only the beginning of the paradox, because the brain wasn't designed to constantly analyze itself. One network inside the brain becomes especially active whenever your attention drifts away from the outside world and toward your inner thoughts. Researchers call it the default mode network. It's active when you replay conversations, imagine different futures, or wonder why you said something that everyone else forgot 5 minutes ago. Self-awareness gives you remarkable insight, but insight has a hidden cost, because every answer creates new questions, and eventually, curiosity can become rumination. The difference is subtle. Curiosity moves you forward. Rumination keeps you standing still. Most people don't notice the moment curiosity quietly changes into overthinking. It happens so slowly that it feels normal. You tell yourself you're simply trying to understand, but your mind quietly begins searching for certainty that doesn't exist. And that's where many deeply self-aware people become trapped. Because life rarely gives perfect explanations. Relationships stay complicated. People remain unpredictable. Even your own emotions refuse to follow simple rules. And the deeper you search for complete control over your inner world, the more it seems to slip through your fingers. But psychology discovered something even more surprising, and it changes the way we think about happiness itself. For decades, psychologists assumed that understanding yourself was almost always a good thing. And in many ways, it is. Self-awareness helps you recognize unhealthy habits, understand your emotions, and make wiser decisions. But like almost every powerful tool, it can be used in ways the mind was never built to sustain. The difference isn't whether you're self-aware. It's where your attention goes after you become aware. Imagine noticing that you're anxious before walking into an important meeting. A healthy mind might think, "I'm nervous because this matters." An overthinking mind often asks a different question. Why am I anxious? What does this say about me? What if everyone notices? The anxiety hasn't changed. Only the conversation happening inside your head has. That's the quiet trap of excessive self-analysis. You stop experiencing emotions and start investigating them. Sometimes that investigation brings clarity, but sometimes it simply creates another layer of thinking about your thinking. It's like trying to smooth the surface of a lake by touching the water. The harder you try, the more movement you create. This is one reason mindfulness practices often encourage observation without judgment. Not because your thoughts are wrong, but because every thought doesn't need another thought to explain it. Oddly enough, the people who understand psychology the most often recognize this first. Knowing why your brain reacts a certain way doesn't automatically quiet it. Insight is powerful, but peace comes from something insight alone can't provide. Acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing that not every uncomfortable feeling is a problem waiting to be solved. Sometimes sadness is simply sadness. Sometimes uncertainty is simply part of being alive. And sometimes happiness quietly appears only after you stop chasing an explanation for every emotion. Ironically, the happiest moments often arrive when your attention returns to the world outside your own mind. A conversation, a walk beneath an open sky, or a quiet moment where, for just a few seconds, life stops feeling like a puzzle to solve and simply becomes something to experience. But there's one final reason self-aware people struggle with happiness, and it may be the most surprising of all. The last piece of this puzzle has nothing to do with intelligence, personality, or even emotional strength. It has everything to do with expectation. The more deeply you understand yourself, the easier it becomes to imagine the person you think you should be. and sometimes that imagined version quietly becomes impossible to live up to. Psychologists call this the gap between the actual self and the ideal self. The wider that gap feels, the easier it is to believe you're always falling short. Not because you failed, but because your standards keep moving just beyond your reach. You solve one problem, only to discover your mind has already started searching for the next one. This isn't pessimism. It's the brain doing exactly what helped our ancestors survive. Human brains are remarkably good at detecting problems. They're much less efficient at lingering on what's already going well. Psychologists sometimes refer to this tendency as the brain's negativity bias. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means your mind evolved to protect you before it evolved to comfort you. The problem is that modern life gives this ancient survival system endless material to analyze. Every scroll, every comparison, every opportunity you didn't take becomes another story your mind can replay. And yet, the people who seem most at peace aren't necessarily the ones who know themselves best. They're often the ones who've learned when to stop negotiating with every thought, to notice without chasing, to feel without resisting, to think without becoming trapped inside their own thoughts. Maybe happiness was never the reward for understanding every corner of your mind. Maybe it's what quietly appears when understanding and acceptance finally begin walking together. So if you've ever felt like your greatest strength sometimes becomes your greatest burden, you're far from alone. The goal was never to stop being self-aware. It was to remember that awareness is a guide, not a prison. What part of this documentary felt most familiar to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy thoughtful explorations of the human mind, consider subscribing for more psychology documentaries. And in our next video, we'll explore why some of the kindest people struggle the most to say no.